This is the greatest thing to ever happen for CX, because now you have bots that can handle all the things that you don't want to talk to a person about. And then the 30, 40%, those I can put a human to deliver a magical experience.
This is The Modern Supply Chain, the show where we break down modern supply chain strategies that help e-commerce brands shift from staying above water to predictably scaling. Today's guest is Eli Weiss, a seasoned expert in customer experience who works with some of the most innovative DC brands in the world, including Jones Road Beauty and Olipop. Eli currently works at Yotpo, a platform that helps brands optimize loyalty and reviews. He's seen firsthand how customer experience could go from a cost center to a growth center. In our conversation, we'll dive into what the best brands are doing to create memorable customer experiences and how they're leveraging modern ways to build brand loyalty. Eli, so good to have you. Thank you so much for being on The Modern Supply Chain.
Thank you, Izzy. I'm excited to be here and excited to chat.
So I think before we dive in, I love to frame the conversation. Really, in the early days of D2C, brands were run by performance marketing. Top line is what mattered. And really was about how do we just sell more goods and pay Meta a ton of money. But over the last couple of years, that has a major shift. Today, brands actually have to run real businesses, profitable, and really every single part of the business, supply chain, loyalty, retention, it all matters. Because at the end of the day, if you want to survive and not really go bankrupt, you need to optimize every single part of your business. So that is in one area, sure, it's supply chain logistics, but equally important is what does your profitability look like? What does your LTV look like? So with that being said, Eli, I think this is an area that you've been in for years and would love to dive into. So I guess first question is, when you started in CX, most brands saw it as a cost center. Can you talk about where it was and where it's going or where it is today?
Yes, I think a couple of things you touched on already, which I'll quickly reiterate, is like we went through this 2014, 15, 16 phase where you spend $1, get $5, the glory days. And the funny part is you still see on social people talking about that, like that's going to happen again, right? Like, oh, this new ad platform is going to give me that same 5X or 10X. And it's just not reality. Like every trend we're seeing, regardless of the tool, regardless where you put your money, you're never seeing the glory days we saw in 2010, 2015, 16, 17. And you're also never going to see the boom we saw COVID, post-COVID again. Like as much as 2026 is optimism, we know that it's not going to be what 2020 or 2014 was like. On the CX side, the idea around cost center makes a ton of sense, right? If you're spending $1, you're making $5, the idea is just push everyone out of the way and let the train keep going. So if somebody's bothering us about a suitcase that has never shipped, just shut them up and pay $7 an hour to whoever's willing to do that. And I was that person. So my first job making like $33,000 a year. And it was just like, just keep them quiet. And what I learned doing that is that over time, you realize that there's more than just what the person's saying, right? If somebody's saying like, hey, I have a problem with the taste of this beverage, if you're seeing 10 people saying it, it's more likely that there's another 100, right? So being the front end of the business to catch things, that's like a side fun pro bono part of this. What we learned over time on the cost effectiveness of it is when you talk about LTV, which wasn't a term spoken about in 2016, like nobody was talking about that. But when you do talk about that and you say, okay, I acquired a customer, how can I make sure, what's the insurance to keep them coming back? Expectation versus reality is something we speak about a lot, right? Like what are the expectations you're setting? And on the CS side, there are two things. Number one is like the closer you are to the customer, the faster you're getting that intel to learn where you're failing. And number two, yes, customer experience can actually be a pivotal part of the business that makes somebody come back. But that's maybe an outlier. Putting that on the side, say, no, Eli, that's Zappos. The part that we learned in the last 10 years, or the part that I learned is customer experience, when it's viewed holistically through every part of the business, it is retention, right? It is understanding where things are breaking and making sure you're fixing them. And it does ladder to every part of the business, meaning product has no clue what's working, what's not, unless the person that the customers are talking to are saying that. And yes, we can talk about AI and all that other fun stuff, but ultimately, without understanding what your customer is saying, you have no ability to make sure they come back because you have no ability to understand what broke.
The early days of Facebook marketing you talk about, the good old days was the Wild West. You put in $1, $5 out. And that actually really started with Google. The early days of Google, Amazon was built on Google. A great platform like that, money comes to it and eventually gets really expensive. Started with Google, then it went to Facebook, now Meta. There is TikTok shops now. I think people are starting to see a TikTok shops, but I'm hoping the lessons learned from history is if today it's cheap, it won't be cheap tomorrow. Because if you like it, everyone's going to like it. Everyone's going to spend money there. So it'll be one of your channels. And hopefully you get a bit of good CAC for the next little while, customer acquisition costs, but eventually CAC always increases if there's a great distribution. Now, in the area that you're talking about, you're looking at these feedback loops. You said product doesn't know what customers are saying, especially in an e-commerce environment. Is it more for retention, or you're actually learning from this feedback of changing product? Maybe you need a bigger zipper, your wheel constantly breaks. So is it more product design or product optimization, or is it no, if we're really good at CX, customers will come back? How do you guys think about it in the CX world?
One of my favorite examples that I've certainly overused, but I always come back to is I was talking to my good friend when he was at Figs. He was the SVP of CX at Figs, and Figs is doing, $400 plus $500 million in annual revenue, one of the best to ever do it, publicly traded. And he was talking about post a product launch. So Figs is selling scrubs for medical professionals. How do they know what works and what doesn't, right? Because on one hand, you're trying to be boring. Somebody wants a predictable everyday clothing. On the other hand, you're trying to push the needle on what you can, right? So different colors, unique shades, unique fits. And can we get away from those tight, skinny leggings to the more kind of wide cut and boot cut, et cetera? And how do they understand what works, what doesn't? So he said after every launch, they would look at three things. They would look at returns through Loop, so better understanding percentage on the return rate. They'd look at their Yotpo reviews to better understand give me from the analytics perspective, positive versus negative keywords. What are the main keywords coming up? And then qualitatively, they'd look at tickets. And I think understanding triangulation of what customers are saying across a wide swath of data is always going to be important. But yes, on the fixed side, it's did this work? Meaning, should we be launching more of this? B, should we be editing, modifying what we already have? And C, are there little issues and maybe QA things that we missed that we can handle one by one? So I think on the CX side, there's the today, let me fix what's currently broken. There's the look back, what did we do right or wrong? For example, if everyone's saying this ran too small, maybe we sized it wrong, but maybe we also, in the product description, we didn't write that this runs true to size versus doesn't run true to size. So sometimes you can just switch the product description and automatically decrease your returns. In the footwear game, we see this a lot with Yotpo. On the footwear side, brands that have really strong reviews and AI summaries and PDPs with a lot of descriptive information can actually dramatically lower their return rate, because people buying shoes, we're all guilty of buying 3 pairs and hoping that one fits versus buy one, wait 2 weeks, send it back, get another one, send it back, get a third one. People just buy 3. But if you understand exactly of 3,000 reviews, 90% said it fits true to size, I think that's where we're heading on customer experience, but also consumer shopping in general.
So that's actually a segue into a focus conversation. So customers, you give them an opportunity to talk, they will talk, which is a good thing. They should be talking. And I know, Yotpo, for some brands can have tens, hundreds of thousands of reviews and comments. And as a brand, very often a brand wants to listen to everyone and do everything. Okay, you're getting tons of feedback. Certain customers want different colors. Certain customers want bigger selection. Some want smaller selection. I think this focus question is really important in a world where there's so much noise. How do you guys think about that at Yotpo or in general from a CX perspective?
I think finding the signal in the noise is the forever question. I think most brands do a poor job of understanding what is a customer saying that they actually want versus a complainer versus somebody that just has a strong point of view but will never buy anyway. So if you look at any Facebook comments on an ad, and people will be saying, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. Search their name in your Shopify, 95% of the time, they never purchased it. Not only did they never purchase it, they don't know anyone that purchased it. The people that are commenting on Facebook are bored and probably need a hobby. That was a learning for me on the brand side is noise almost rarely equals signal. And putting back on the Yotpo side, yes, verified buyers, right? So make sure these people actually purchased your product. B, understand look at the most popular words, understanding the trends. When somebody left a 5-star versus a 1-star, what did they do after, right? So if they left a 5-star, you loved it. Did you purchase it again? Or did the person that keeps giving a 3-star keep buying it because they thought it was good enough? So a lot of the times it's the action to me is more important than the talk. So the people that are commenting and the people that are actually acting are almost always different. It's what's happening when they purchased.
So signal listening, I think, is so key for brands that we talk to, and really layering that focus layer. To your point, take away the noise. What is the signal? Go deep. Does this person actually buy from you? And based on that, very carefully and with prioritization, potentially release new colors, potentially new flavors. One of the comments you said at a previous podcast that I saw is that at Olipop, you did things that didn't scale. You did human touch things. And I'm curious how you think about in this world of AI, which some of this AI stuff is noise, but some of it is very real. How do you look at things that don't scale from a CX experience when you're competing against AI, which is meant to put things that don't scale out of work?
I love the question because this is actually something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Like a year or two ago, when I was at Jones, we would get pitched every single day. I mean, every day was a new AI tool. Sienna, Sierra, Decagon. Now they're like, we'll automate your whole CX. And for everyone in CX, there was a moment of fear, like, does this mean we're out of a job? And I kept saying this is like a hot, spicy take. Oh, it's going to come for the growth guys first, or oh, it's going to come for the creative guys first. More so because it was like a fun take to say on a podcast, being the only CX person to defend this. But I do think like over time, what we saw is a few things. Number one, this is the greatest thing to ever happen for CX, because now you have bots that can handle all the things that you don't want to talk to a person about. Like when I get on a phone with Delta and I have to wait 45 minutes to ask you a question that I would love for a bot to answer, phenomenal. But if I'm stuck in an airport and you canceled my flight or you lost my stroller, I want to talk to a person. I want to talk to a person now. And I think the best brands in the world are going to do that. They're going to say, okay, what can I automate? And it's probably between 60 and 95% of tickets that I can automate or solve for pre-reach out, pre-first touch, I can solve for those. And then the 30, 40%, those I could put a human to deliver a magical experience. I started writing about it actually for my newsletter this week. And I was writing about my stay in London a couple of months ago where I stayed at like a cheap Hyatt place or whatever. And I came into the hotel and it was just a machine. So there was no check-in, it was just a machine. I scanned my passport and it printed out a key card. And in my head, I was like, that was so disgusting and vile. Like, I should have just gone to a hostel. The room wasn't fancy. The experience was Like, why Hyatt Place? A hostel was $90 or $60 for a super clean private room. And I think I then realized that like if you went to 11 Madison Park and it was like a great food experience, but no human experience, it would be extremely lackluster. And hospitality is learning that first, that human experience is human experience. On the e-com/social side, we're still in this weird phase where like most of my Twitter replies are bots. Moltbook is now like a social media for bots. OpenAI is now saying, we're going to scan your iris to be able to log into this social media platform. And I think we're going to see that in CX as well, where the meaningful touches will always be human and they'll be fantastic and they'll be so amazing. And everything else will be like a bot. And I know it's a bot and it gives me the right answer. And you put me through a virtuous cycle of just bot after bot after bot to transfer me to a supervisor bot versus just like putting a human at that problem. That's the glory days of CX. We spoke about it on the Olipop side where everything was, this is pre-AI, everything was human. And we said like, if we're spending $100,000 or $1 million a month on ads, can we take $1,000 to create magical experiences? And I think it'll be like even more optimized over time where you'll say 95% is bots. But these bots are so smart that you have a supervisor bot that's looking at all the queries and says like, Eli, if you have 5 minutes, this is the one. And I can come in and give that person a phone call, jump on a Zoom and just change their life. Like that's the future of hospitality, of AI, of CX that I think is going to make everyone 10 times happier. Like if you have a bot that gives me the answer, and I see this even on returns, right? Like sometimes you can jump in, even with Amazon, with Rufus, you jump in, give it your problem, it gives you a solution, it gives you a refund, or it says you can't, and you didn't talk to a person. And as an introvert, that's fascinating. It's amazing. It's my greatest thing ever. But then in a hotel, I want to vomit. And I think like humans will learn that.
It's so interesting. I think there's this concept called unreasonable hospitality.
Yep.
And the example I have is I go to China quite often. When I travel in the US, I'm staying at like a Marriott or a Sheraton, but in China, I can stay at the Ritz-Carlton. It's not expensive. It's very affordable. And when I go there, my classic is in the morning, I have coffee and a mango. That's what I do. One of the times I went, I come in and I get my coffee. I'm like, hey, by any chance, can I get that mango I always get? Like, sorry, sir, it's just not in stock. We don't have any. I'm like, don't worry about it. I go and I grab something else. The next morning, I come for my coffee. Within 30 seconds, I had a mango sliced in front of me. And they said, we know yesterday you wanted a mango. We know you usually get a mango. We sent someone 45 minutes away to a farm where we could get mangoes for you. Now we have stock while you're here. Blew my mind. I said this story 10 times. And even at Portless, we say, how do we give the mango experience? How do we give the Ritz-Carlton experience? And to your point, it was magical, where it could have been like, not a big deal. It was out of stock. I have been a promoter of theirs ever since. And now my team goes, they're staying there as well. But to your point, I understand in hospitality, how do you bring that to e-commerce? You mentioned one example, like, oh, you should call this one. Is that the answer? It's 1 in 1,000 get a human touch? Or is that okay? Maybe, and I would argue the opposite. Maybe where it's not in hospitality, maybe when you're not in a restaurant or you're not in a hotel, it's okay. Don't talk to anyone. But I would also argue, equally, you're losing a massive part of an experience. So how do you balance that? Like, what is the right answer?
So number one, my favorite part, and there's a book about the Ritz-Carlton stuff as well. My favorite part about Ritz is they learned that the mango is all that matters. It's that one moment and that one experience. And there's a book about like the peaks and the valleys, right? Like deeply understanding, like it's called The Power of Moments. And it's like deeply understanding when to create that peak, right? Like if you came in and you said, my shoes are wet, and they came over and they bought you a new pair of shoes, you'd be like, this is so strange and bizarre. Like I'm creeped out. I don't need the shoes. I just needed a napkin. But understanding like when is the mango moment? And if your entire day before that was messed up and you got a mango, you'd be like, well, whatever. But if everything was going poorly and they checked you in late and they messed up your other newspaper order and everything else, the mango would mean nothing. So like understanding where to fill those valleys before creating the peaks is like what Ritz-Carlton does better than ever. To your question about e-com, I think we're still in a phase where 95% of instances, to your point, are not high stakes. I just wanted my package and it's 2 days late. But if you understand the nuance, and again, with AI agents, everything's scannable, everything's understandable, everything's digestible, you'll learn that this person, you have like an entire dossier on them. And I love like the new tools like Outer Signal, where you can deeply understand like who they are as a person outside of their order, right? But if you understand, okay, this person, extremely high net worth, placed 10 orders from me, never had an issue, has no time to breathe. The issue they're having is not just that it's an issue, it's that they ordered Olipop for their wedding and their wedding is next week. So if somebody ordered Olipop and it was delayed, big deal. Like we'll send them a $10 discount. But if it's the most important day of your life, that's your Ritz-Carlton moment. So I think like we're going to understand nuance outside of the order, the whole human understanding, right? The beauty of hospitality is you're coming into 11 Madison after a full day of work. They understand what you do for a living. They understand, did you drive or did you walk? They understand that you put your car in the meter, and they know that the most meaningful thing would be for you to not think about the meter, so they put in coins. And it's 50 cents. But I think it's like understanding the context of like who you are, what you do, what you're about. And I've never been to 11 Madison, but the idea like that you come in and they know what you look like because they put together a dossier on you is fascinating. But if I did that in other places outside of hospitality, I'd be a creep. So I think it's like, it's the wider scope that I think is going to become crazy, crazy good.
If I understand correctly, again, there's a lot of noise out there, but when to do the human interaction, what is the right signal will matter. So it's not that everyone will get it, but the right person to get a call or all of a sudden express order because we know we wanted a weekend before your wedding, that's what matters.
Yep. And I think it's also going to get so much better over time because all of the things that are annoying as hell, and there's so many partners in e-com, like SaaS providers that I think are doing phenomenal work. Like Loop Returns is one of my favorites because like they're starting to think about this friction in such a deep way already. When I'm processing a return, if I'm a first-time customer versus a 10th time customer, if I purchased 100 times from this streetwear brand, after 100 orders, one of them for the first time ever, I got the wrong size. I went in to process that return. They would treat me like I'm a first-time scammer who came off the street who's trying to make a buck off of them. And they would just put every stop to make sure it's miserable. So they'll say $10 restocking fee. You have to cover your own shipping. Once it arrives back, it's 7 days of processing. Once it gets processed, we'll give you a store credit. Versus when I'm using Loop and this brand like Bombas, for example, I place 10 orders. I click return. I click I don't like it. They say, Eli, the socks were $100 for 6. We'll give you a $120 credit right now to purchase right now. Just send it back with this free label. If it gets back, you'll be good. If you keep it, we'll have a problem. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, so you're saying I don't have to wait. You're saying I can either get a return for $100 or get $120 store credit, which again, for them is genius because $120 store credit costs them $20 and the return costs them everything. But immediately $120 store credit. I love the socks. Now I get new socks. Now you get your return. And they did that because I'm a 10-time customer. For a one-time customer, they can just say like, yeah, we'll give you a credit, just send it back.
Or are they more of a Zappos type of brand? Right?
So I think Bombas as an example is closer to a Zappos kind of brand, but there are so many brands, and Loop just did like this massive, like 23 million returns, 400 million shoppers, like this study.
Yeah.
But like to try to understand the nuance, where it works, where it doesn't. But what they saw is overwhelmingly, when you give your longtime customers a different return policy or like an easier chance to fix whatever, it's mind-blowing. And I think that's, again, the hospitality piece that you're seeing in e-com that was unscalable 10 years ago. But now with AI and scale, we can actually do this. Like in 5 years, this might sound insane, but AI agents are doing 80% of the shopping. How does Yotpo create loyalty programs for agents? But also, how does Yotpo create loyalty programs that every single human can have a personalized experience based on what we know they liked or purchased elsewhere? And I think like this singularity of understanding like every agent is their own shopper with their own world understanding, the only thing lacking was the knowledge and the scale. But we can do all of that with AI.
The knowledge and the scale of when's the right time. What's the mango for that person?
Correct. And when is their mango moment?
Yeah. All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, on that note, you mentioned loyalty and rewards. Where do you think that goes? Again, credit cards, 1 point for every dollar spent. Brands, I don't know, you buy with us 5 times, your next thing is 5% off. Where do you think that evolves to, loyalty?
I think like, and I came from a world where I worked on a ton of consumer brands, but I never launched a loyalty program. Like at Jones and Olipop, we didn't have loyalty. But coming into Yotpo, like I saw 2 things. Number one, the cost to create like an AI slop version of loyalty program is next to nothing, right? Like I can launch something tomorrow. The best loyalty programs in the world understand nuance. So they understand like tiers have to be optimized, right? If you spend $100, you're tier 1, $200 tier 2, $300 tier 3. And then I look at the data 6 months later and 99.9% of people are not even getting past $100. So I have an LTV problem. But if I switch the tiers to tier 1 goes till 60, tier 2 goes 60 to 120, then I can like slowly push behavior. So I think like the set it and forget it days of loyalty are dead. I think like setting up a loyalty program for $10 through the guy that's going to do it for you from Craigslist is not smart. And I think loyalty programs are living and breathing and need to be optimized regularly. And I think over time they will be hyper optimized where we'll say, we know your customer, we know the behavior you want to get them to, and we can build something that will slowly move behavior over time. The best programs in the world can move customer behavior. Starbucks is like the legendary one where they're a bank. And now they just announced like the new stage in their loyalty program. For every $20 you add to your Starbucks card, you get X amount of points. And the amount of people that will add 20, and you and I both know, if I have $20 in my Starbucks card, I'm very quick to spend $8 on a beverage, where if I'm paying cash, I'm spending $4.50. Understanding human behaviors and what it takes to push them and building something around that, that's where this all goes.
You've, I think in the past, pushed for adding friction to the journey, if it leads to a higher LTV. As a former performance marketing person, that is like the craziest thing to hear. Like CAC versus LTV, like, wow. So I'd love to hear a little more on that. Like, what does that mean?
I'll give you 2 examples, like real life Olipop and Jones Road examples. So on the Olipop side, and I shared this in the past, we ran this ad that was like a beautiful pour shot. It was like a Pepsi Super Bowl ad where you saw like a Coke or Pepsi over ice and you heard the fizzy, all of that. And you saw that the ROAS on that was phenomenal. Like we were driving a ton of customers. None of those, almost like 0 of them repurchased. The LTV on the customers that came through that ad with that UTM was lower than ever. And we asked ourselves, like, how does that make sense? Number one, like, is this sensible? Because it was still like we weren't profitable on order number 1, but it was much cheaper. And number 2 was like, why? The hypothesis was the people that are seeing that ad are understanding that this is something that's a Coke. It's a Pepsi. And they're like, okay, if I'm spending $3 for a can versus 50 cents, I'm sure it's 10 times as good, without understanding the nuance of like, it's not terrible for you, the microbiome, all the claims we made on the side. And what we learned is like, that's an easy way to get a one-time order. If we added friction, we said, here are the 10 reasons why drinking Olipop is better. Yes, we'd have a lower return on the ad spend, but over time, the LTV was much higher. So that's one example. On the Jones Road side, what we saw over time is when we put people in a quiz, they were 10 times more likely to spend a lot more money. Why? Because on both order number 1 and LTV, they understood what the right product is to get. When you're choosing makeup online, most of these shoppers have never bought makeup online. The understanding is, I hope it fits. But when you see models that look like you, when you see the colors, what they will look like on you, yes, return on ad spend, like you might have a slightly lower click-through, but the people that click through will spend more money on first order. Like we saw it was like 30, 40% higher order number 1 and like 70% higher LTV. So again, like, and this is not every brand. Apple probably shouldn't be adding friction to their iPhone funnel, but I think it's a hot take that sometimes lands.
No, I get that. I think like in our world, we've talked of like ICP, ideal customer profile, right? You could have lots of customers come through the funnel, but it's actually noise. It's actually horrible. They're going to have high churn. They don't get your value proposition. So basically back in brand world, it's like, sure, give a little more education, pay a little bit more on your CPC, put a little more on your CAC, but you're getting the right customer for the product you're selling. And those are the ones that will hang around. And those are the ones where your LTV will kick in. And you could afford that CAC, hopefully, a lot more with those moves.
We see that on the Yotpo side too, right? Like You can sometimes find these customers that will negotiate down for 6 months to save $1,000 on a $20,000 contract, and you'll spend a year to get them. And actually the other way is like sometimes you'll have these super quick, easy customers, but then they will leave 6 months later versus the ones that are, like it could take 6 months to win them over, but they will stick around for 10 years because the same choosing mechanism that takes them 6 months to choose you is what makes them not want to swap platforms every 6 months to save $1. And I think like people have started thinking more about LTV, even in the acquisition side, than they ever have.
I think that ties in actually interesting from like an Amazon perspective, from a brand. So we talk to brands like, hey, I'm building this product, I'm building this story, I'm building this. Really, they're storytellers and brand builders. But there's also an Amazon that lives out there. And all of a sudden, there's a non-branded version that's competing with you. I guess from your perspective, Yotpo, past brand experiences, any advice for brands like, hey, you are a brand. Yes, they're cheaper out there, but if you go rock bottom, you're probably going to go broke. Like, what is the moat of a brand from your perspective in CX world?
Moat is almost always brand, and brand means story. Like the difference between a Hunter boot and the 27 other boots are not the material. Like you can get a Shein boot that is the same, feels the same. It's the fact that people are excited to wear a Hunter boot. The difference between Glossier and the cheap competitor is that it's Glossier. And I think very few brands can live to build that. But I think the only thing you have as a brand is a story you're telling and the product community universe you're building. I've seen this a lot, even in the supplements world, like the difference between creatine and create. But the reason why somebody's choosing Gruen is because everyone and their friend is using it. And because everyone and their friend is talking about AG1. And I think most brands don't live long enough to create that. But when they do, they realize that you can charge a premium for that. So yes, it takes longer to build, but when you invest in building a brand, you can demand a premium. And if you play the race to the bottom, it's just like a volume game that you probably won't win anyway. So you're going to race to the bottom.
I think this very falls into, again, DTC 1.0 versus DTC 2.0. Back from the days of just like pricing matters, meta ads, et cetera, to building community and doing it profitably. And you're really good at this. Like you built a community online, you build communities for brands that you work with. If you were a founder, if you're advising a founder that started day one, limited budget, how should they be telling the story? How should they be building community?
So two things. Number one, in this world of everything AI, like humans are tired. Like they're tired of having to guess every single text, every single tweet, every single video. Like, is this a human? We're just going to crave authenticity. And the only way to build authenticity in your brand is being yourself and creating your story around who you are. I've seen this and I'll talk personally on the brand side. On a personal level, I will never be the smartest in the room. I will never have the strongest pedigree. I won't have the Harvard education. I won't have worked at the X, Y, and Z brand, but I have my own story. And I've kept my story quiet for so long. And then I realized that authenticity, that's my story. And on the brand side as well, is unless it's your product, which is the greatest product in the world, the only thing you have is your story. And I think most brand founders say, no, I want to build a great brand, but I don't want to be in the limelight. Well, then you probably chose the wrong job, because I do think founder-led brands, founder-led stories, this is the future in a world of slop. And unless you're Nike, where you've built a million years of brand equity, the only thing that sticks out, and there's so many great examples, even in the food and beverage world, there's so many small brands that are building yogurt companies and cottage cheese companies, young women that are just sharing their story on social and going viral every day. Unless you've had legendary money or legendary expertise, it's you. And in the world of AI, it's just you. Even on the social side, so many people are oh, how do I build my social presence? Well, the first step is bringing yourself to social. Right?
Yeah.
You're expecting yourself to jump into ChatGPT, have ChatGPT write 35 posts that are all slop, and you're expecting to put your slop near other people's slop, and your slop should do better. It's going to get weird, but I think we're going to have this human resurgence that will be scary. More parties, more face-to-face, because that's all we have.
This might tie into predictions, but I guess if you had to pick one thing about customer experience in the next 5 years, specifically in the DC space, what would it be?
I really think that what we're seeing in hospitality will be more and more and more into the experience, customer experience world. The only concern we've had over time was it's so expensive. And we don't have the margins, which is hysterical, because obviously restaurants don't have those margins either. But it was always we don't have the margins, we can't afford it, X, Y, and Z. When everything is AI and everything's automated and it costs you an agent and some Claude credits, those human experiences will matter so much that it's going to be the only thing that Why am I buying David Protein from their website versus Amazon? Why am I doing anything D2C? Why am I buying from you versus the competitor? Yes, like product will always matter, but those experiences that create like brand affinity, we'll just keep coming back to that and hope it'll finally be scalable. So like do things that don't scale might actually be scalable if you're doing 5 of them a month.
Mango experiences at scale.
I love it. That's your book.
That's my book.
Yeah.
Eli, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Love the conversation. Where can people find you?
I am unfortunately too easily accessible on the internet, but I'm Eli Weiss with an extra S on Twitter. So Eli Weiss, WEISSS, and Eli Weiss, WEISSS.com, and on LinkedIn and everywhere else that people can find me. But it's been such a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to The Modern Supply Chain. If you have questions about anything we talked about, you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in learning more about Portless, check out our website, portless.com. As always, hit that follow button so you don't miss an episode. See you next time.